Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Match Lab 2025-2026 information session. I am Matt Morse. I am the Director of Private Investment Capability here at Creative Australia, and part of my team's remit is to look after our match funding programs such as Match Lab and Plus One. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge today that I'm joining you from the beautiful Wurundjeri country here in Naarm in Melbourne, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and of course to any First Nations people joining us today and my amazing First Nations colleagues here at Creative Australia. I would also like to acknowledge our two Auslan interpreters that are joining us today. As you can see them on screen, rotating we'll have Jamila and Fiona. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we encourage a lot of questions throughout this session because it is an information session. So we do have that function available for you. So if you have a look at the base of your screen, you can see the Q&A function. If you write a question in there, that will be received by Lisa and Paulina from my team, and they will get back to you. And if there is a theme that's coming across in the questions, my great colleague Stephen will address that in the future part of the conversation. So I am today joined by my colleague, Stephen Richardson. He's the Development and Partnership State Manager for Victoria and Tasmania. And joining him will be some special Match Lab alumni. And so we've got three great artists joining us today. But I will let him introduce them shortly. Now, I won't labour too much on the program guidelines because they are readily available on the Creative Australia website. But what I will do is take the opportunity to go through some of the key points when thinking about applying for Match Lab, and also how to make a great application and what are we looking for here at Creative Australia. So if you're not familiar, the purpose of Match Lab is to support artists and artist groups to build fundraising skills, increase their knowledge in philanthropy and business partnerships, to create sustainable sources of revenue into the future. The program provides dollar-for-dollar match funding and supports long-term skill development through subsidised attendance at our fundraising professional development collective clinic. So as you can see on the screen right now, we offer match funding, and for each of the selected participants in the program, we offer up to $10,000 match funding per participant. So as you can see, what is the opportunity of Match Lab? Match Lab has got two components. Firstly, match funding. We all love match funding, dollar for dollar, to be able to go out there through our nominated fundraising campaign and have each dollar that's raised up until our $10,000 ceiling matched by Creative Australia. And then the second part, in the formative part, is a skills development opportunity. And we call this Raising Money for Your Art Clinic. And this is a 2-day clinic that we host in Melbourne on the 28th and 29th of October. And if you are lucky to be one of our 25 participants that are selected to participate in Match Lab, we cover your subsidy to participate in the Raising Money for Your Art Clinic. So what are the stages for Match Lab? As you know, applications are already open and they're available through Creative Australia's grant making system. So if you haven't already, you need to register to access our grant making system. And you can do that quite simply by going to creative.gov.au and applying there. And once you're set up, you can access this opportunity and put through your application. Applications close the 5th of August, so you've got a couple of weeks to go to submit your application. Once that's done, we assess that internally with some industry advice. And what do I mean by industry advice? peers, people that have participated in the program, individual artists or representatives from artist groups that are aware of the challenges that are faced by, individual practitioners. And they provide us with advice to help us identify who we'd like to be a part of our 2025-2026 cohort. And as I mentioned before, we've got the clinic taking place in Melbourne in late October. And then once that's taken place, we ask you to submit your final fundraising plan, which tells us how are you going to raise your money, basically. Who are you aiming to raise that money from? And how much are you planning to raise? And so once we've done that, you have up until the 31st of May, 2026 to undertake your fundraising campaign. Once you've done that, you verify the money that you've raised with us through a verification acquittal, and then we pay you the matched money. And then you can go off and do your fundraising, do your project activity. What you fundraise for is completely up to you. So it may be for professional development, it might be for the realization of a film or a creative development or something that you've identified as part of your practice that is going to be of benefit to you. So we do have some eligibility when it comes to this particular program, as with any program where we seek applications. So as I mentioned, MatchLab is for individual artists and artist groups. So what does that mean? It means that we can't support arts organizations, school groups, tertiary education or training institutions. Applicants that have outstanding acquittals with us, so check that. If you have a acquittal that's due with Creative Australia, make sure that you're on top of that. So therefore, your application does reach us so that we can assess that. And MatchLab at this point in time is a one-time only opportunity. So what do I mean by that? So if you've participated in MatchLab once in your career, it's not available to you again. As we said, we've only got 25 places per year, and it has that really strong professional development opportunity to that. So we want to make sure as many artists and artist groups can participate in the program. But to be eligible, also, you must be a practicing artist or a group of artists. You must be an Australian citizen. You must be over 18 years of age, and you must have an ABN, or be able to receive your funds or have an agreement in place. Oh, what has happened there? Something's just happened there, but that's okay. We can work through that. You must have an agreement in place with an auspicing body that can facilitate the grant for you. And also you must be available for the raising money for your art clinic, which takes place in October on the 28th and 29th. Okay, so the application, what are we looking for when you put forward an application through to the MatchLab program? So what are we going to ask you? We ask you for a brief outline of your art practice. So we need you to tell us a little bit about you. What are some of the great things that you've done? What do you set out to achieve with your practice? And then we ask you to highlight 3 of your artistic achievements or career highlights. So tell us the great things that you've done that relate back to your practice. And then tell us a little bit about the project that you're seeking to fundraise for. So whether or not that's the making of the film, or if that's the professional development opportunity, it can be whatever you like. And then we like to know a little bit about the initial fundraising idea that you have for your MatchLab campaign. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a concept. It's something that you're thinking about, something that you will refine if you are selected to participate in the program because of the raising money for your art clinic, that's where we unpack that and that's where we refine it. And you may get new ideas or think about things differently. And at the conclusion of that, you go away, work on that and refine that. And that becomes your final fundraising plan that you do activate during the fundraising window. We ask for information about your auspicing body. That's for many individual artists, that's what they do. They can auspice their funds through a third party. So if that's applicable, we ask for that information. And as we've asked you to tell us a little bit about the project that you're seeking to fundraise for, we also ask for a project budget, just so that we know that what you're setting out to do artistically, from a budget perspective, it kind of marries up, so that we know that the project that you're thinking about it, not just from the artistic point of view, but also from the financial realization. And within that project budget, make sure that you do include the money that you're planning to raise through your fundraising campaign and also through that matched grant from Creative Australia. And then we want to know a little bit about your ambition. So tell us a little bit about your experience with fundraising. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It may be that you've had very little experience when it comes to fundraising, or it's been quite limited. But tell us about that. Tell us a little bit about how you want to grow your skills in fundraising. Part 7 is a great opportunity to do that. And then finally, tell us why participating in MatchLab and the raising money for your art clinic is going to be great for you in the financial sustainability of your career. So participating in MatchLab is not just about participating in an opportunity that is just going to solve a gap for this particular project. We're looking to support artists that are thinking beyond their project. And I say that because they want to take the skills that they're learning, not just the skills undertaking a fundraising campaign, but also the skills about thinking about how to create a fundraising plan or talk to donors or present to business. We're looking for people that have that ambition and are thinking about the future beyond the opportunity. Now, I'm going to pass over briefly, just in 1 second, to my contact. He's not my contact. My colleague, Stephen Richardson. But before I do that, I do want to tell you about 2 things. How do we assess your application? And we have 2 criteria when we're assessing your application to us. And they are viability and impact. And viability, this is where we will use your answers to the questions that I've just had on the screen before against, so we'll look at a demonstrated track record of your arts practice. We'll be looking at the evidence of previous skills in fundraising, or as I said, your willingness to learn new skills. We look at the evidence that you've given us in your capability and capacity to fundraise and deliver a fundraising plan that builds private sector support, either through individual donations, crowdfunding, philanthropy, trusts and foundations, or even business sponsorship. And the final part in viability is that you've given us a budget that is realistic and well planned. And with the second criteria, impact, we'll look at the evidence that you've proposed a plan that will build skills in fundraising and increase your knowledge of those private sector areas that I mentioned before: philanthropy, business partnerships and sponsorship through individual donations, crowdfunding, philanthropy, trusts or foundations, etc. And finally, just the evidence that your proposed plan will assist in the ongoing financial sustainability of your arts practice. So you're really telling us a story about who you are, what you're looking to fundraise for, how participating in this particular program will help build your skills in fundraising, but also look to developing a sustainable practice that is complemented through fundraising. Not that fundraising will replace everything, but fundraising will complement the other areas that you build revenue to undertake your activities into the future. So now I will hand over to my colleague, Stephen Richardson, and I will, yes, welcome, Stephen.
Matt, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Matt, and welcome friends from around the country. I'm also joining you here from Wurundjeri country, here in Melbourne, and of course, I pay my respects to elders past and present. Matt, what an incredible detailed introduction to MatchLab. One of the suite of leverage funding programs that we have available through our programs. The reason why we do leveraging or matching, if you like, is because it really works. Offering a dollar to be matched from government sources is a really powerful tool and a really powerful lever in raising your funds. So I'm Stephen Richardson. I'm the State Manager for Development and Partnerships here in Victoria, and I also take care of Tasmania. I should say I'm part of a disaggregated team around the country, which is available to all of you, irrespective of how you go with MatchLab or whether you're part of MatchLab program or not part of MatchLab program. My job, our jobs essentially is to assist you and your organisations or your collectives or groups with your non-government fundraising. So really trying to find money, get good at securing money, and the tactics, strategies, and methodologies around finding money. So irrespective of how you go with MatchLab, if you're part of MatchLab, terrific. If you're not part of MatchLab, please track us down if you need support in trying to find support for your arts practice. So, having said that, I'm thrilled, excited to be joined by some wonderful colleagues, some alumni, as Matt said, from previous MatchLab presentations. I've got a series of questions. We're going to sort of conduct this as a bit of an interview style so that we can try and draw from the lived experience of these incredible artists, how they went about their fundraising, uh, any sort of particularities around their experience that they want to share. Because we think this is, the lived experience out there in the sector at the moment is of incredible value. So that's why we're sort of doing this kind of deeper dive. So thanks for joining us, wonderful colleagues. I want to start by introducing our guest artists, Hayden Burke, Holly Austin, and Ravi Chand. As I said, incredible artists with incredible CVs. I haven't got time to go into a deep dive around their CVs. Matt shared up on the screen Ravi's CV. But Ravi is an award-winning producer, director of Fijian Indian heritage, who's currently completing a Master of TV and Film at VCA. One thing that Ravi particularly shared just prior to joining us was that he is an incredible interpretive dancer of Michael Jackson dance move and has been since he was 4 years old. That's something you won't find on his LinkedIn profile. Holly is also an actor, writer, musician, working predominantly in film and TV and theatre, mainly amongst young people. And another thing you won't find on Holly's LinkedIn profile is that she's invented a beatboxing bum bag. So think about the capacity to beatbox while you're walking around the streets. It's incredible, very inventive, very incredible. Hayden is a director, actor, and founder of the Seventh Floor Artist Studios. And in his spare time, away from that role, that very demanding role, he also has some red-nosed clowning skills. Again, something you may or may not find on his LinkedIn profile. So thank you, wonderful colleagues, for joining us. I want to start really just by sort of opening up to each of you. And Holly, if I could start with you. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your MatchLab campaign, the methods you use, what you found really helpful, and also a little bit about the project you fundraised for.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Stephen. And hi, everyone out there. So the project I raised and used for the Match Lab campaign is called Kite Choir, a Global Sky Symphony. And it's a large-scale participatory theatre installation, which has over 195 flying, singing kites. Each kite is representative of a country in the world. And it's tethered to a specially designed kite spool that has a speaker inside it. And that spool plays a single sung voice of a child from all over the world. So it's a huge project with literally lots of moving parts, and we needed some cash, for want of a better word, to get it off the ground. And so we were raising money for 10K, and we ended up raising over 22, which was unbelievable. It was for our first development, which is about to kick off now and kind of rolling out as we speak, to prototype the spools and the technology and all of these kites. Some of the things I think you asked me, Stephen, what are some of the things, the methods and things? Social media was a huge one, and using my own kind of personal following and network. I would say like the most success I had was the personal kind of reach out. And that meant from texts to personal emails, and then also sharing the story and the project across social media. And we had so much success with people feeling really excited and connected to the project itself. And I guess following up is the other thing that I found really useful in connecting with people, whether it was, seeding things really early in the campaign, again, whether that was a personal email or a text, and then kind of following up 8 weeks later. Just taking your time to kind of seed and plan, I found was really, really useful.
Terrific, Holly. Look,
Yeah.
I think what you've highlighted there is some really important sort of information methodology there.
Yeah.
What the research tells us is that the more personal our approaches are, the more successful they're likely to be, right? From, personalized emails, personalized notes, but also in-person meetings as well. Eyeball to eyeball in the same room is often a really effective form of fundraising communication. So I will come back to you. I want to hear from Ravi. Ravi, if you could perhaps share, some of the strategies you employed for. Well, firstly, let's hear about your project. I know really compelling project, but a brief description of the project and what you raised money for, how much you were seeking, and then some of the basic strategies that you used.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from Boonwurrung land, which is a part of the Cool Nations in Melbourne. We had a target of $8,000, had 46 donors, and raised 8,100, which was then matched. Donors were mostly from my own personal and screen industry networks. Crowdfunding was for my VCA Masters graduating film, and for those of you that aren't in Melbourne, VCA, Victorian College of the Arts, which is part of Melbourne University. And it was also a proof of concept for a feature film. It's called Coconut, and the reason why it's called Coconut, it was about assimilation and about identity, meaning brown on the outside, white on the inside. And it's about 19-year-old Dev who, after the recent death of his grandpa, becomes best friends with his non-English speaking grandma after they teach each other how to swear in Fiji, Hindi, and in English. And it's derived from my own personal life about meeting my grandma as well and my relationship with my grandma. I teamed up, I guess part of the strategy was I really wanted to focus on the power of language and having that stripped away and then regaining it, what that actually meant. And so Fijian Indian or Fijian Hindi has a very specific history. And so I teamed up with prominent Fijian Indian social media marketers and also content creators and also media that were Fijian Indian. And we did a series of interviews. And it wasn't just about, hey, we're fundraising. It was about the importance of language, the importance of our culture, and why it was important for this coconut story to be told.
Yeah.
We also had behind the scenes interviews with crew as we were going on location scouts and kind of showing a little bit behind the scenes. And I had personalized emails to networks and also to previous donors as well.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Ravi. That's incredible. And again, it exemplifies the idea that, strangers don't necessarily give. Often when people start their fundraising journey, they think it's just a matter of sort of contacting someone who's got capacity to give. But unless someone has interest to give, and also a connection to your work, to the thematics of your work, or to you as an artist, or to your practice, they're unlikely to give. So the idea that you're connecting with people who are engaged with you is a really important platform to build from. So thank you for sharing that. We'll come back. Hayden, over to you. Tell us about your project. Any particular strategies that you used? What was your lived experience? How much were you trying to raise and what for?
Thanks, Stephen. We were looking to raise 7,200 and we raised 8,400, top of my head. And I did a very mixed approach. So yeah, the personal networks, the friends and family, all of that jazz. I kind of did three separate main ways of fundraising for Australian Open, which is a play about an elite tennis player and open relationships. It's a comedy. It's very fun. And that was the Queensland premiere of it. So that was my project. The three types of fundraising we did a fundraising event that was open to the public, which was like, yeah, wider networks, I guess. Anyone could come to that. And then we did a private dinner, fundraising dinner, which you actually suggested in the clinic, and that was part of it. And then we also had the fundraising platform as well, which I managed to get some sponsors, which is not necessarily something that MatchLab talks about. But like you said before, if they don't know you and there's no interest, they're unlikely to give. So I sort of how do I create the interest? How do I create the value? Because I'm competing with everything else that people want to spend money on. So I have one example I can give now or I can give later about it if you want.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Hayden.
Yeah, so I did the play Australian Open harps on about an esky a lot in the play and how amazing this esky is. So I thought, well, there's great opportunity there if somebody sells premium eskies. So I went and looked up and I found this store called Dune Outdoor Luxuries. I'll get back to that later. And I said, look, I've got this play that harps on about the best esky in the world. You sell eskies. Is there a way that you would like to be involved in the project as a sponsor? And we'll put your brand on the front of this esky because you're so I kept it really simple, low input from them. All they need to do is provide an esky, and I'll put them on the program, and I'll put them, in the play on the esky. They said yes to that. I put them on the poster. I showed them the poster. They were very happy with it. And I said, well, look, if you're happy with that and you see that I can deliver on that, why don't we do a match funding? If you give us $1,000, MatchLab will give us another $1,000. And then I will put you on the t-shirts because I had Game Clothing did the t-shirts by this point. And I will set one of the scenes that's in a designer store at Dune Outdoor Luxuries in the play. And they're like, let's do it. So it was so if I went straight to them with that at the beginning, they probably would have said no. But because I said just an esky, and we'll see how we go. And it was happy, and then we built on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably how I went.
Brilliant.
A little different, but it ended up well. We got the sponsors, and then when you get one sponsor, that helps with the other, and you just do that added value. So that's probably how my fundraising thing was a bit different. But I went in with a high value opportunity for them with low input to them, and that's probably, I would say, the tactic I used. And you don't always get a yes, but
Yeah, no, brilliant, Hayden. Thanks for sharing that. Again, you've highlighted some really interesting things. The idea that you can build a relationship. So, starting with, a conversation or a kind of early buy-in or a modest buy-in, and then escalating that is a really important part of that sort of methodology. So that's really terrific. I mean, the other thing I would you've all mentioned platforms. So I'd sort of just quickly run around, which did you use a fundraising platform? What was it? Were people donating to you directly, to you through your website? Which fundraising platform did you use? Holly, perhaps you could kick us off with that.
Yeah, Stephen, I used as the Australian Cultural Fund's platform,
Yep.
ACF,
Yep.
and the benefit of that was that they They don't like other platforms, fundraising, Kickstarter and things like that. They don't take a commission, and it's also tax deductible. So that was along with the Match Lab kind of match dollar for dollar. I think it was another really appealing aspect for donors going, hey, I get a tax break. Woo. And to be honest, that's where all of my donations I drove. I made a website with a really kind of slick pitch video that would then also link. And then in terms of those platforms that link to all of that through my Instagram and
Yeah,
Facebook was
terrific.
essentially where I drove them to link to the ACF link.
Yeah, brilliant. Again, great highlighting the idea that the tax deduction is a sort of amplifying incentive for people to make that donation. Ravi, did you use a platform? Which was it? How did it go? Anything to offer there?
No, exactly the same as Holly. Australian Cultural Fund is the second time that I've been doing fundraising through Australian Cultural Fund, and easy to use platform, and just for all the reasons that Holly suggested
Terrific.
before. I also did, like, on our website, had a page set up, but it had the link to the video, and again a really well put together video that was also taking you to the Australian Cultural Fund profile as well, so that they can just feed everybody into the donation sort of funding. And
Fantastic.
everything on social media also funded through to that as well. And that was our main go-to point. Founded the Australian Cultural Fund, together with MatchLab, actually added a lot of kudos to it as well.
Yeah,
So
brilliant.
that was really helpful for us.
Yeah, look, and for those of you out there who haven't heard of the Australian Cultural Fund, essentially it's a digital fundraising tool that you can direct donors to donate to you. You receive the money, we send them a tax receipt, as Holly mentioned. There's no fee involved, so it's a free service. And it's a really sort of streamlined way for you to manage those donations. And the tax deductibility, as we've said, is often an extra motivator. So if you haven't heard of the Australian Cultural Fund, do a bit of a Google, see how people are using it. But a really handy tool. And again, irrespective of whether you're part of the MatchLab program or not, the Australian Cultural Fund can be a really terrific resource. Hayden, what about you? Did you use the Cultural Fund as well?
Yeah, I used the ACF as well, and I just saw there's a question from Brian, which is really on point, saying I thought we could not promise anything in return for support. If they're donating through the ACF, that is the case because they're getting a tax break there. That's what their thing is. But if it's a direct transfer, not through the ACF, to your business as an artist, then you can, because that's a sponsorship. So sort of you could look at it, ACF tax break, that's your personal or whatever, and then you've got sponsors over here, which they cannot go through the ACF, and you make that really apparent. So I had a sort of flow chart showing how you could donate. Do you want a tax deduction, or do you want to be a potential sponsor?
Yeah, terrific. Yeah,
That's
look,
how.
and that's certainly something that we clarify. If you use the Australian Cultural Fund, it's what's known in the tax office terms as an unencumbered gift. People will give you money. You can really do with it what you will. The transactional notion of a sponsorship. This is all articulated in the clinic you'll go to. And as I said, if you don't make the cut to the clinic, all of your state managers in your local jurisdiction can really articulate and explain that. I want to move quickly on to messaging and case for support and communications. I think, Ravi, you mentioned video, or one of you mentioned, the importance of video. And the video is essentially something you can send out through your social media platforms. It can be hosted on the Australian Cultural Fund. And really, this is a quick fire, way to ask for money, but also to articulate what we would call your case for support. So understanding, the importance of your work, and also, I guess, engaging people emotionally is a really important part of fundraising. So perhaps you could explain a little bit about what was your case for support. Holly, you mentioned, it's a kite project and getting it off the ground. I mean, that's quite a little quirky little bit of messaging. Did you lean into that at all? What was the sort of case for support, the compelling reasons? Why would anyone give you money?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think the world's a bit of a bin fire, and there's a lot at the moment. And this project taps into, people's desire to want to have some hopes, something that unifies us, something that amplifies young voices, and all those things are what this project is about. And so, finding ways like a really succinct 30-second video on social media, having a 2-minute pitch video that kind of talks about that in more detail were really great ways to kind of
Yeah.
get the message out. And to be honest, I didn't have to do too much more other than the project highlights people's desire to want to kind of, if they connected to it, they really did reach out and
Yeah.
and feel compelled. And I think that kind of storytelling aspect of, whatever your work is, finding what that key thing is. And I will say one other thing is that Match Lab workshop was so useful for that, because we were not only just learning that from our amazing facilitators, but we were kind of practicing what those key messages were over those days together. And that was so invaluable.
Yeah, yeah, incredible. No, absolutely. People often give with their head and they give with their heart.
Yeah.
So you've got to articulate, the rational reasons why you need the money. But I guess we've also got to pick up people emotionally. Ravi, your project seemed to lean into that as well. I mean, obviously that, the connection with language and language restoration, obviously intellectually and rationally, that's a pretty powerful tool. But I wonder, what's other, and look, part of the advantage you all have, you're all artists and, professional communicators in a way. How did you lean into your case for support, and what sort of tools did you use?
Again, the video was the number one tool for us, the pitch video that's set on the ACF website. And it was about personalized storytelling. It was at the core of everything that we
Yeah,
do. And so speaking honestly, speaking freely and authentically. Coconut, which is the project that we put forward, was anchored in my grandma's legacy. And the project was being about unapologetically Fijian Indian and
yeah,
about that sort of representation, what that meant as well. And just to give a little background for those who don't know, a week from my 12th birthday, my mother passed away in a car accident, and my simulation into Western Australian culture went into overdrive, just trying to find a place to belong. And I stopped speaking my language because when I spoke it, I had an Australian accent. They laughed at me and would basically call me like a coconut. And then I just threw myself in being as Australian as I possibly could. And then 24 years later, I found out what a mistake I'd made when my maternal grandma, my mum's mum, who I thought had passed away decades ago, was still alive and waiting for me in the same house in Fiji. And so when I reconnected with her, she reconnected to my language and to my culture, and she didn't laugh at me. She just accepted me for who I was, and because I was her blood. And that after 2 years with her, almost every week I started speaking to her in Fijian Indian. It was broken Fijian Indian, but it was enough for us to have a conversation. It went for 1 to 2 hours, and so that was a driving force of the legacy that was through this film. And my grandma and I, she could speak three languages, Tamil, Fiji, Hindi, and native Fijian, but couldn't speak any English. So the way that we bonded was by we teach each other how to swear. And that was the birth of Coconut and where it came from. So and another part of that was also we were offered $1,000 donation as well, as product placement into a film. And just based upon what my grandma's legacy was and who she was, I knocked back that $1,000 because they wanted that product placement, because it was rooted in what my grandma stood for about being honest. And also, it just would look completely odd having a product placement in a story about language and about community and culture as well. So that was at the core of everything. We lived and breathed everything
yeah, brilliant.
as part of that.
Yeah, brilliant, Ravi. Again, highlights some really incredible things. I've heard the word authenticity, vulnerability, in terms of how you communicate your work, really super important. The old adage goes, you're not going to ever hoodwink anyone and trick anyone into giving you money. That doesn't mean you can't lean into some, humor and other devices, but, authenticity is just really, what we know works. Also, Ravi, interesting, you knock back some money. Again, people want to join a really powerful values offering as well. So the fact that you sort of said no to someone, that really creates a nice proposition around values. Hayden, what about you in terms of, trying to communicate your case for support? Was there anything you could offer the group?
Yeah, definitely. First, I just wanted to say you're such a good storyteller, Ravi. I was just back into the thing as well. It's definitely a campaign I followed you on. Yeah, he's distracting me with this good story. What's the question, Stephen?
My question is case for support, the
Yeah.
reasons why someone would give you money, in terms of the Australian Open project, what were some of the aspects that you leaned into in relation to, trying to articulate the reasons why someone would give you money?
Yeah. Well, so you had the target audience, which was, people who, the place celebrated queer culture. So you had that community that was one thing. So we did a scene showcase at the Melt Festival up here in Brisbane on Yagara and Turrbal Land, it's about a queer festival. So we had that element. And then we also had people just wanting to support independent theatre.
Yeah.
So we did a pitch video as well, but it's not as highly polished as Ravi, so I'm not a filmmaker. But I filmed it in the theatre with all the people on the stage. So I kept the essence of what I was doing, not trying to show it's a video because stage play and incorporate that. So I'd probably say, yeah, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you have something that works well, keep that and use the natural skills that you get as a value add to what you're already doing. Why else would people give us money? Uh, we had the sporting element. There does have an elite
Yeah.
tennis player on it,
Yeah.
and we put the play on during the Australian Open to
Yeah.
try and get that target audience coming in because there's the Brisbane International Festival. I got to say that one didn't work so well because there's not a huge crossover between sport and
Yeah.
theatre. I found if only we had as many people coming to the arts as we have going to sport in Australia, which solved most of our problems. So, we tried a multi-prong approach and some things worked better than others. Is probably
Yeah.
how I would answer
Yeah,
that.
terrific. Thank you. Okay, so I want to sort of just, slightly switch the conversation a little bit to talk about, what were some of the challenges. If I mean fundraising is hard, is work. It's can be really hard work. So if you had to isolate, a challenge that you overcame, what was one of those things that you wish you'd have known before you started the journey that you don't now know? Holly, maybe you could kick us off.
Sure. Like without needing to go to therapy, just actually believing you can do it. Like one of the biggest things was just the self-doubt factor. At the especially beginning, even after the workshop, just going, okay, this is a lot to absorb. And to be honest, it was the key. One of the things I've never done as an artist really was to fully go and, put my hat out. And and I'm going to make a big sweeping statement here, but Australians in general, I don't know if it's a skill, just asking for money. It's really, there's a lot of, apology, and it's certainly not my go-to anyway, is my point. And so really just having the confidence to ask and start early. And the other thing is the size of the campaign. Like I ran a 10-week campaign, just pacing yourself. And as Hayden just mentioned, there's so many things that you're trying and approaches, and some of them fail. But
Yeah.
kind of just picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and going, it's almost like seeing it as another creative experiment, like you would as a theatre maker or as a maker.
Sure.
Having that kind of mindset of like, okay, I try this. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, try this.
Yeah.
And as you sort of move through, or I moved through those 10 weeks, kind of just having to give yourself a bit of a pep talk, and keep going and really leaning into then, hey, but what's working? What's working?
Totally.
And as soon as I kind of changed my attitude around that, it really kind of the momentum of the campaign itself built.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, again, you've highlighted some really interesting things. I mean, the two main reasons people don't give to you, number one, they haven't been asked.
Mm.
And number two, they don't necessarily know that you need the money. So we've got to communicate a powerful ask, but not in a sort of desperate and needy way, in a really positive way. And you're right, Holly, the experience that we have around, people asking for money is most people feel a bit awkward about asking for money. They want to see themselves as self-reliant, able to sort of stand on their own 2 feet and don't want to be seen as a charity case necessarily. But of course, as artists, you're creating powerful experiences and visions to share with the world. So it's really important to hold on to that. Hayden, what about you? In terms of, something you now know, having gone through the experience that you wish you'd have known beforehand.
Yeah, if you're having a longer campaign, having things pre-planned that are going to happen, because no
Yeah,
one's waking up on a Tuesday going, "Oh, today's the day I'm going to give to the ACF campaign of this person." If there's not something to prompt them and trigger them,
yeah,
it's not happening. They're just miraculously. So there's all these lulls in it. So I wish I'd pre-planned. I had the three big events, but I wish I'd pre-planned some little things before the campaign started that
yeah,
would just happen on those dates to sort of prompt people to do that. Because one of the most successful moments was when I had the fundraiser and also being agile because it was meant to be at a tennis court and everyone came, but it was raining heavy, so we ended up playing table tennis in the theater. So just being able to agilely
yeah,
swiftly change. But I teed up, I teed up someone to say that they were going to donate $1,000 on that day. But rather than just say, have them do it, I pitched it on the day and I said, anybody who gives in the next hour during this event right now will be matched by somebody else. So, and then it'll be matched again by MatchLab. So if you give $50, this donor up to $1,000 will be give $50. MatchLab will double it again. So your
yeah,
$50 has just become $200. But it's only for this hour. Create that sense of urgency. We're all there. There was free
yeah,
food and
brilliant.
drinks and whatever. And then we raised 2 grand in a few hours
Yeah,
versus this
fantastic.
huge lull in the campaign when nothing else was happening.
Yeah,
So it's like creating the opportunity for it to happen and then letting it happen, I guess. So they're just the work beforehand, really.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes to that question of a fundraising narrative, and to have a series of sort of really interesting narratives around your project or your fundraising project to sort of announce and release on a regular basis. Having that all pre-prepared, saves you. It helps you sleep better at night, but also keeps the campaign fresh. And it's not just about hectoring people for money every time. It's about saying, I've secured a venue, I've got a great collaborator, we've got rights to music or whatever it is around that fundraising narrative. Ravi, what about you? What do you know that you wish you'd have known before you started?
Um, I guess doing it on my own was really tough. I guess I did research for all interviews that we did, the editing, photography, graphic design, the post for the post, the copy for the post, emails, the works. And at the same time, I was actually studying my master's in film and TV. I've got an 8-year-old son, bills to pay, all that sort of stuff, trying to manage
Yeah,
that. So one of the things that I really had to be specific about was making sure I was really organized before I launched that campaign of exactly when each message was going to go out, which audience it was going to target, and making sure that I segmented that audience as well. So it wasn't just the same message to the same people all the time. Otherwise, if you just keep on hammering people with the same message all the time, it does feel very spammy and people tune out. So rather than doing that, there's peaks and troughs. So I'd figure out, okay, when is this audience going to be most active and send them a message, and then a different sort of message to another audience where they were, more active that particular time. So it didn't seem spammy. Gave them a bit of a break over, and I did mine over a 30-day period, and
yeah,
that was specifically to drive the urgency of that as well, and also because I was doing a master's, I don't have time to, just do it over a very long period of time. But I guess I was exhausted before I even got to the shoot. I felt like the crowdfunding was more work than actually doing the funding, but you're doing the actual film, but you have to be prepared for it. Without it, I could not have done that film. And so the why was really important as to why I was doing this. And every time like I, run out of energy, like I'd find a video of like my grandma when she was alive, and I'd just play that back to me of us two just having a conversation together. And then I'd remember, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And then I go back into it. And that is what kept me going the whole entire time.
yeah, it's terrific. Fundraising is hard work, no doubt about it. We've got to set aside time and energy to do it really well. Okay, I guess I would encourage people to put questions in the Q&A or chat function where they can. We'll get to those in a second. I guess I want to go to now, what was the biggest thing you overcame in terms of, Holly, you mentioned, the fear of asking. I wonder if there's any other, you know, challenges around fundraising that you would particularly reflect on. Hayden, maybe I could start with you. Just sort of think about, what was the biggest challenge you overcame in this little journey?
I've probably half back to something that happened at the MaxLab clinic, which my personality is predisposed to, but it was this thing of we're all coming and going, geez, I don't want to ask for money. I don't want to beg for money. And I may have been you, Stephen, it may have been Matt or someone else. You said something along, and it was pretty, people go, wow, that's intense. But it was like, who are you to decide for somebody else whether they're going to give you money or not? Isn't that their decision? Are
I
you not
think I think
stealing
my
their
I think my catchphrase there, Hayden, is that you don't have the right to stop people giving you money.
Yeah, that's right. So it was this change of thinking and
Yeah,
perspective going, okay, I am going to walk into a business and go, I have something of value for you.
yeah,
You'd be lucky to, I need nothing from you, but you'd be lucky to have me. Just giving
yeah,
yourself that right, giving
yeah,
yourself the right, and I guess the courage, and then being able to take the no, and then walk into the next place and go, here's something of value for you. And then when you get the win, geez, it's satisfying. And they came to the show, right? The Dune and whatever, and they loved it. And they said, what are you doing next? So it was a success story at the end. So you got to take the W's with the L's, but it was just change of perspective of giving yourself the right to ask for money and actually going, you know what, I'm an artist, I have something of value to add as
yeah,
well,
brilliant. Yeah,
because you get to come and see the art and you can be like, oh, I supported this play. I supported
yeah,
independent, that paid actors, that paid artists, that, supported culture in the community.
yeah, super important. Ravi, what about
Yeah.
you?
Um, yeah, I'm kind of on the same as Hayden as well, and I think most of Match Labs are as well. Like you, I hate being sales pitchy, and I really don't like being that sales pitchy sort of person. And so, particularly when times are really tough, and I guess I was in that before the Match Lab kind of session that we had, or that really did change my thinking around, okay, who am I to decide for somebody else? But at the same time, like, I'm not that type of Demtel person who's going to be right in your face. And so what I had to lean into was who I really was,
Yeah,
and the way that I can deliver the message, and also knowing that what you're creating is of value, and
yeah,
knowing the value that that will actually have in the world. And so reminding yourself about that, um, as you're asking people, and the worst people will say is no, and then you just move on and you keep continuing on that journey and keep on going. So I think resilience and persistence is also a part of this as well, but also being true to who you are too.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. Holly, anything you'd like to quickly share? I'm aware of our time, but anything you'd like to quickly share?
I really feel like everyone's covered it, to be
Yeah,
honest. I'm hyping all of what they've both said, Ravi and Hayden.
yeah,
Yeah.
lovely. And Hayden, I'll quickly pick up on something you said. You said about, next time, so the idea that you're building relationships, taking a longer term view that, you guys will be in this cycle maybe again, and that the people who've previously supported you is a great place to start for your next project. The next idea you have or the next evolution of your project is really important. Um, I'm just going to see if there's any questions in the Q&A that we can throw to. Give me a little second.
Stephen, while you're saying that, one of the things I think
Yep,
that's worth mentioning is that is definitely what you just said about after the event. Yes, of course, you raise the money, but the other thing that you get to walk away with is a mailing list and a
yes,
dedicated audience that are supporting not just this project, but you as a creative artist. And I think that is like,
yep,
again, totally invaluable to have this ongoing audience that hopefully will continue to follow your work. And that, yeah, it's an amazing thing to walk away with.
yep. Yeah, look, a really fabulous question from Dawn in the chat. Thank you, Dawn. Um, Around, the amount of effort required to do this work, and apart from the ancillary benefits, Holly, that you've just mentioned, building those relationships, building a cohort, perhaps even building an audience. It's a lot of unpaid hours that are required to do this work effectively. So in your estimation, worth it, not worth it? I mean, you could have perhaps just gone off and done a day job and saved your own funds and forgot about the fundraising aspect of that and just put your own funds in to support that work. Was it worth all those unpaid hours to do this work? Is it time efficient for you as an artist to do that work? It's a pretty good question. Who wants to start? Hayden, jump
Yeah,
in.
I'm happy to answer that one. So I it would have been 1,000 hours of my life from start to finish, no joke, this project. Because I run a thing called Seventh Floor Playground, which is a play reading event. And this started as one of these, as a play reading event. So then it got picked up, and that's how Seventh Floor Theatre finds the plays we produce. So it was quite a few years running. But what is there at the end of it now is we did a great production. It had great reviews. I've built this legacy for the fundraising campaign. Met a bunch of artists. I could remount the show potentially as well. I've got all these T-shirts and like this small quick side story. This painting behind me, there it is, was on display at the theater. I like the art. I said to the artist, "Could we use that in the show?" They said yes. Give me a concept, and then they did like a whole thing, one for every character, which we put on the back of the show, and then it supported their art. And now we're collaborating, and it can be an incubator for other things to happen. So yes, it was 1,000 hours, but maybe it's going to save me 1,000 hours in the long term in terms of the network that it creates. And I've chatted with Holly and Ravi outside of this and other people in the Match Lab, and we have a Facebook group. So it's kind of like an investment in your practice. And that's the thing that surprised me about Match Lab is it wasn't just a fundraising thing. There was the clinic,
Yeah.
there was learnings, and there was like outcomes about trying to build a sustainable practice. So
Yeah,
that's
terrific. Another great question from Matthew out there. What are you all working on next? And we'd love to hear about how you might be re-engaging donors and maintaining those relationships, beyond this first campaign. I assume that that's certainly part of what the Match Lab Clinic has encouraged, building those relationships to keep them going. What are you all working on next? Holly, what's your current thing?
Oh, look, as I mentioned, I'm just in the rollout of Kite
You're rolling it
Quiet's
out.
first
Yeah.
development. So I'm literally today on Zoom with some kite makers and my
Amazing.
Victorian team sort of getting ready basically to have a
Yeah,
fly
fantastic.
day in August. I'm also under commission for a new work with the Opera House. So yeah, it rolls on freelance artist style, always
Yeah.
a lot of plates spinning. But I will say, yeah, having that now audience that I can, you know, I've decided I will email them 4 times a year. No one wants more mail than they need in their
Oh, that's right.
emails, but just having that network, as Hayden just spoke about, is so awesome.
Yeah,
Like really,
great.
really excellent.
Amazing. Ravi, what about you? Next project? Anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, a lot in the pipeline. Coconut is a proof of concept for a feature film, so that's already
Right.
underway of development for that as well. And once I graduate the masters, I'll graduate with something as a long form to take to marketplace. And also, Coconut is a short film to enter into major film festivals around the world. And also, it clearly shows like a proof of concept and
Yeah.
really easy to communicate to the marketplace of how this can become a feature. But I just wanted to also go back to what you were talking about before of the fan base of what you actually build up. One of the things that my company, its logo is the same tattoo that my grandma had a tattoo here on her chest when she was 12 years old. And that is the logo of our production company and the tattoo that I have on my hand. And one of the things my grandma was most concerned about before she passed away was that she would be forgotten. And um, when the pitch video went out and people would donate, I'd immediately contact them to say thank you. And people would get back to me about how much the story of my grandma actually reminded them either of their grandma or it really touched them and how they just loved hearing more about that. And so for me, there was an intangible thing about something that my grandma always was concerned about, that even her legacy lives on afterwards as part of this as well, and is rooted in everything we do as well. So for me, it was something that's of value that's even more so than something money can't really give me anyway.
Totally. Look, thank you. Look, folks, we're out of time. I'm just overwhelmed by the generosity that you've shared today. So incredible. So much valuable information. Um, and friends out there who've joined into the webinar, the webcast, please use this to deepen your application to the MatchLab Clinic. You can see it's been a really incredible experience for these artists. We'd certainly encourage you to throw your hat in the ring. And as I said, if whether you're successful into the MatchLab program or not, the Creative Australia is here to help you through the State Manager Network. So please, I'll ask my colleagues to put our connection, our links into the chat. So please reach out to us if we can be of service to you in any way around the big challenge of creating support for your art. But folks, artists, Holly, Hayden, and Ravi, thank you so much for sharing and being so generous with your time. We really appreciate it. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for a great conversation. Just a bit of a wind up from me. So you will receive a link to the copy of this recording early next week, but it will be available on the Creative Australia website, which is creative.gov.au. Just search MatchLab. So if you want to watch it again and get some tips from Hayden, Holly, and Ravi, that's a great idea. As Stephen stole my thunder, state managers, they're incredible. They're worth having a conversation with to really think about your fundraising journey. It's the 10th of July today. We've got until the 5th of August to receive your application. So get in there, have a look at the questions, have a think about them. But the guidelines do sit on the Creative Australia website, so you can give some thought to that. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, please contact the private investment capability team. They're here. Lisa and Paulina are here to help troubleshoot any questions that you may have. You can contact them via email, and that is cpa.programs@creative.gov.au, and they will get back to you shortly. But thank you, everybody, for your time today, and forward to seeing all of your applications. And best of luck, Hayden, Holly, and Ravi. I look forward to what's next. All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Thanks, team. I put my
Bye.
next thing in the chat, but happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you.